Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. As always, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Turning over the rocks. That's the focus of tonight's angle. When President Trump tasked a willing Elon Musk with making the government more efficient again, it was clear that this exercise wouldn't just be performative, where they review a few programs, make a few cuts, and then just declare victory. No. This time, they were serious. And what better place to start than the ongoing foreign slush fund known as USAID?
In shutting down, which we're in the process of doing, shutting down USAID, the reason for that, as opposed to simply, trying to do some minor house cleaning, is that as we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms.
Yummy, a bowl of worms. And once they started turning over the rocks there, more worms crawled out. USAID should have been disbanded years ago. Now, the agency's top recipient of taxpayer dollars, that has been plagued by allegations of massive waste, fraud, and abuse for decades. And these agencies that benefited rushed to settle with the DOJ after Trump was elected. The largest for-profit contractor for USAID agreed to pay the U.S. government $3.1 million, and that was related to fraudulent billing by a Nigerian subcontractor for a global health supply chain project. And now with the USAID offices at least temporarily shut, with all the dead weight laid off, just imagine how deep this rot goes. Now, the Biden years were just an excuse to spread money around to radicals here, there, and everywhere. In 2023, USAID sponsored scores of DEI events here and abroad, including my personal favorite. I just Googled this and found it today. One was called Celebrating Women in Waste Management, with panels including USAID staff with these titles: Senior Gender Advisor for Environment and Climate, Social and Behavior Change and Gender Director, and Gender Specialist. Well, you get the idea. This is why it's so critical that DOJ scour every inch of our government, every line of the Federal Register, every penny that goes out the door. Remember, it's your money. You earned it. Don't let anyone else waste it. And also that DOJ notifies the president when staff and spending is unnecessary, when it's duplicative, when it's fraudulent, even destructive. And of course, when it's not specifically required by law, then just eliminate it. Yeah, and that will inevitably mean entire agencies are zeroed out. Please zero them out. And with the runaway agendas, the spending of USAID, it's long past time to close down all of it. Congressional oversight? It already found millions of USAID funds going to administrative costs alone.
We got all kinds of threats from USAID because I was trying to exercise my oversight capacity in Congress. My staff and I had estimated was that 30 to 40% of the USAID's awards would go to indirect costs. So their overhead, their rents, employees, things like that.
What are they living in, the Taj Mahal?
But for decades, both the left and some checked-out Republicans let the agency basically just have its way, with little to no one looking over their shoulders. And during the Biden and Obama years, the gender, the climate, the race activists, they just went to town.
They went totally crazy what they were doing, and the money they were giving to people that shouldn't be getting it, and to agencies and others that shouldn't be getting it. It was a shame. So they're tremendous fraud.
And as anyone who's spent time on a farm knows, when you fill the pig trough every day and you fill it with better and better food, well, the animals, they expect that food no matter what. And when they don't get their food, especially at the required time, they start squealing.
We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power That is how dictators are made.
I don't know what Elon Musk's motivations are. I don't know what his purposes are, but they've got nothing to do with what has been lawfully adopted by the people of the United States of America through the Congress of the United States. We're going to defend USAID all the way.
Well, first of all, USAID was actually created in 1961 by JFK via executive order. And that was after he signed the Foreign Assistance Act into law. And as the chief executive of our government, Donald J. Trump has the responsibility to safeguard our economic well-being, which is now being jeopardized by these types of fraudulent programs. And they're all across the government, by the way. This is just literally scratching the surface. Of course, actually cutting the fat out of government, well, that might as well be a war crime, according to the press.
You want to authorize purging of State Department personnel? What does that mean exactly?
Well, if you want to take a look at the State Department, where DEI has been a priority over, let's say, diplomacy in many accounts, I can give you hundreds of examples of where they were authorizing.
What proof do you have of that?
Sure. Let's list them off. $500,000 to expand atheism in Nepal, $50,000 to do, let's see, a transgender opera in Colombia, $47,000 to do an LGBTQ trans comic book in Peru, $20,000 a pop to do drag shows in Ecuador. Shall I continue with more examples of where DEI was the priority?
It certainly seems like there could be a review of things.
You think, Margaret? Well, of course, Democrats, who are in desperate need of a new boogeyman, are trying to shift blame here. So the bad guys to them aren't the ones robbing the U.S. taxpayers by rewarding their buddies with sweetheart deals in far-flung places. No, the bad guy is the person reviewing the programs for fraud and abuse. That's Elon Musk.
Elon Musk may get to be dictator of Tesla, but he doesn't, and he may try to play dictator here in Washington, D.C., but he doesn't get to shut down the Agency for International Development.
Well, that will be for a judge to decide ultimately, Senator, and I imagine on appeal, at the very least, the Trump administration will prevail, including at the Supreme Court.
If it turns out we really need such an organization in the future, we just create it. Problem solved. By the people, answerable and answerable to the people and to the people's elected representatives. That is the way that government is supposed to work.
Yes, it is time for the government to be returned to the people. You are the stewards of the people's money. And it's not the personal piggy bank of government employees who think they answer to no one.
USAID is not an independent, non-governmental entity. It is an entity that spends taxpayer dollars, and it needs to spend it, as the statute says, in alignment with the policy directives that they get from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, and the President. And it's been 20 or 30 years where people have tried to reform it, and it refuses to reform. It refuses to cooperate. When we were in Congress, we couldn't even get answers to basic questions about programs. That will not continue. That's not going to continue.
Well, it can't continue. But President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, and Secretary Bessent, and Elon Musk, they all know that regardless of what your priorities are, regardless of what you want the government to do for you or for some, other foreign country, right now America is on a collision course with a dangerous economic reality. And they know that bold, unconventional, and sometimes very painful measures are going to be needed to avoid the icebergs ahead. So all those guys, the Trump administration, they're going to be sued, they'll be maligned, they'll be threatened, they're called dictators, but they're not going to waver. Keep turning over the rocks and clearing the path to common sense, and the people will follow. And that's the angle.
You can't say he didn't warn you. Mass deportations, caravans making U-turns, migrants sleeping at Gitmo instead of four-star hotels. DEI destroyed, bureaucracy slashed, FBI purges and foreign aid cuts. More on that later. California's reservoirs are even filling up, and wind farms off the Jersey Shore canceled. Countries are learning a very important word in the English language: respect. Colombia did a 180 after tariff threats and started taking back their bad hombres. And after flipping Biden the bird, Venezuela is taking their migrants back too. All it took was a trip by Rick Grinnell, who flew home with 6 American hostages. What'd we give up? Nothing. Up next, Panama.
Secretary of State Rubio is in Panama right now, and we're talking about the Panama Canal. What they've done is terrible. They violated the agreement. They're not allowed to violate the agreement. China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China. That was given to Panama foolishly. But they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen.
After Rubio's first visit, Panama ripped up the canal contract with China's Belt and Road Initiative. Trump also started a trade war with Mexico and Canada, a 25% tariff on all imports. Democrats pretended it was economic Armageddon. Chuck Schumer said, "What about my cerveza?"
What's that going to mean? Higher prices for New Yorkers, higher prices for Americans. It's going to affect almost everything. Let's just take Super Bowl Sunday, okay? It's going to affect beer, okay? Most of it, Corona here, comes from Mexico. It's going to affect your guac, because what is guacamole made of? Avocados, both from Mexico.
Before Chuck could put down the avocados, the Mexican president buckled and agreed to send 10,000 Mexican soldiers to the southern border to stop migrants and fentanyl. In exchange, Trump paused tariffs on Mexico for a month if they behave.
So the call with Mexico went very well in the sense that they're very strong now on the border.
Did you blink this morning?
There was no blinking. No, she's a wonderful woman, but she did agree to 10,000 soldiers on the border. I would say that's a lot. Would you say that's pretty good? 10,000 soldiers on the border?
Sir,
and the 10,000 soldiers are going to keep illegal aliens out, and they're going to keep them out, seriously out, and otherwise they're going to have a big penalty. Mexico's going to be penalized.
Yeah, Trump got Mexicans' help to secure the border and slow down mass migration and drug overdoses. But for a few hours there, it looked like we might have had to pay 10 cents more for guac. China's backdooring cars and dumping cheap steel through Mexico. And the cartels are funneling fentanyl and illegals into the United States. If countries are going to wage economic and drug warfare on us, why have we been waving the white flag? Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth went down to the southern border today and said this.
Border security is national security. Guys and gals of my generation have spent decades in foreign countries guarding other people's borders. It's about time we secure our own border. Mission accomplished means 100% operational control of the border. Right now, that means a surge of manpower. To the cartels, all options are on the table.
Trump's DEA chief is vowing to build a multinational army of good to fight evil. So Mexico's not off the hook just yet. And neither is Canada. They were next.
Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it.
American banks in Canada are barely allowed to lend money, and they can't even accept deposits less than 6 figures. Canada dumps cheap lumber into the U.S., and it erects major duties on American dairy farmers. Plus, they're delinquent on NORAD and NATO, so it's time to pay up. Canada tried to hold out and just ended up begging for mercy.
Americans have to understand how hurt and, frankly, how furious Canadians are. Our sovereignty is being challenged. And so, yeah, regular Canadians across the country are coming up with ways to stand for Canada, to fight for Canada, to defend Canada, but mostly to say to our American neighbors, guys, just cut it out. Just stop it. This is a terrible idea.
Well, our first mistake was begging for mercy on CNN, not Fox. Everybody knows Trump doesn't watch that channel. We're even seeing trade war propaganda on Canadian SNL.
What the hell are you doing?
What?
The
That's Heinz ketchup.
So?
It's American. Buy French's. It's Canadian. We're in a trade war, you traitor.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Mrs. Butterworth? You were going to buy American maple syrup?
Oh. Okay, that costs way more.
So does freedom.
Canada needs us more than we need them. Over 75% of Canadian exports come here. They can't win a trade war with us. They know it, Trump knows it, and there's only one way out.
Look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them.
But before I even got on the set for The Five, Governor Trudeau crawled to the table. Quote, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. Canada caved. And in exchange, Trump paused tariffs for 30 days. There was no inflation. There was no recession. The market closed pretty much flat. But we've been told tariffs don't work and that Trump's trade wars are reckless. Well, so far, every country that's been threatened bent the knee, and we haven't conceded a thing. And if tariffs are eventually enacted, American consumers have a choice. We don't have to pay for Corona. We can buy Bud, just not Bud Light. Tariffs encourage Americans to buy American. And it encourages multinationals, if they don't want to get hit with a tariff, to have their products made in America. That boosts American jobs and wages. Europe's next.
We have massive deficits with the European Union, massive, like $350 billion, if you can believe it. They don't take our farm product. They don't take our cars. They don't take almost anything, but we take their cars. We have millions of cars coming in, BMW and Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen and just so many different cars, and we don't do anything about that. How many Chevrolets or Fords do you see in the middle of Munich? And the answer is none, because they don't take any cars. They don't take anything. So the European has abused the United States for years, and they can't do that.
The Europeans have a 10% tariff on American cars. We know what the U.S. tariffs European cars. 2.5%. America should never accept bad trade terms, especially when we pay to defend Europe. You can already see how the European trade war is going to end. They'll drop their duties on American car imports, pay their NATO dues, and German car plants are going to shift to South Carolina or Tennessee. And Greenland's destiny is also a part of this negotiation. We see you up there. There's a new sheriff in town, the Tariff Sheriff. You combine economic power with gunboat diplomacy, and you could put together a new world order based on America first.
Every single one of those countries is dying to make a deal. You know why? Because they're ripping us off really badly. And the United States is tired of just being ripped off. And that's why we have $36 trillion in debt. We have it for a reason, because we make bad deals with everybody. And we don't allow that anymore. In the end, you're going to see that either very, very substantial tariffs are going to be paid by them, or they're going to make some kind of a deal.
With Trump, there's always a deal to be made. He just announced from the Oval that Ukraine will have to sign over rare earth minerals in exchange for our generous support.
We're telling Ukraine they have very valuable rare earth. We want what we put up to go in terms of a guarantee. We want a guarantee. We're handing them money hand over fist. We're giving them equipment. European is not keeping up with us. They should equalize. And look, we have an ocean in between. They don't. So we're looking to do a deal with Ukraine where they're going to secure what we're giving them with their rare earth and other things.
Lithium, uranium, titanium. There's just some of the rare earth minerals that Ukraine has that are critical to the future of the American economy and our national security. We can't let China dominate this space. A powerful economic message is being sent. And on Saturday, the world heard a powerful military one. Trump ordered airstrikes against ISIS leaders in Somalia. American commanders are being unshackled by the timid rules of engagement placed on them by Biden. Our enemies will be taken out early and quickly, preventing big wars by winning small battles. The rupture you're experiencing, the whiplash you're witnessing, is a commander-in-chief with vision on a mission and a young cavalry in the cabinet to execute action fast.
We have great, great people coming in. I think I'd like to say the best ever recruited for government. I think we have the finest people ever recruited for government. You're starting to see that because we've done more in 2 weeks than Biden's done in 5 years, 6 years. They could be here between him and Obama. You add it up, okay? We've done more in 2 weeks than they've done in 12 years.
Joe Biden liked to say, never bet against the United States. But other countries were, and they were winning by betting against Biden. And now that the big guy's gone and the tariff sheriff's in charge, there's law and order here at home and abroad.
And welcome to Hannity. And tonight we are kicking off the week with a jam-packed show. Coming up, the border czar, Tom Homan, Senator John Kennedy, Senator Ted Cruz, two of our favorite senators, Vivek Ramaswamy, and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt will join us straight ahead. It was a big day at the White House. In fact, every day is a big day at the Trump White House. The flurry of activity from the Trump administration is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's nothing but shock and awe and the media melting down, Democrats melting down, which makes it fun. But make no mistake, we are witnessing what is a transformational presidency in the making. According to Donald Trump, border crossings now down 93%, and he's only getting started. In just the past 24 hours, Mexico caved in the face-off of Trump's tariff threats, agreeing to send 10,000 members of Mexico's National Guard to secure their side of the border, crack down on fentanyl and smuggling and illegal immigration. Canada also caving, little Justin agreeing to list Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations, appointing a fentanyl czar and participating in a joint strike force to combat crime at our northern border, which is becoming bigger and bigger every day. Keep in mind, along the border in our north, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, Border Patrol agents, they apprehended nearly 20,000 illegal immigrants from over 97 different countries last year. Now, that number is higher than the past 17 years combined. But now that Canada and Mexico have agreed to start being good neighbors, the tariffs have been paused for 30 days, while more permanent security, economic deals will be negotiated. And for the record, we give Canada, why do we give them millions of tax dollars every year? Why don't they pay their fair share with NATO? And they already charge tariffs on our dairy, our poultry products. They won't allow, U.S. seeds to be imported into their country. Sounds like they already started a tariff war, a trade war. Unfortunately, for many years, free trade seemingly operated one way. So why should the U.S. give Canada tens of millions of dollars in foreign aid, protect them with our military, while they contribute a tiny amount to NATO? Sorry, little Justin, but this unfairness on your part, it is coming to an end. The days of taking advantage of the American people and their generosity is now over. And it's not only Mexico and Canada, the left-wing governments in Colombia and Venezuela even caving to Trump's demands, both countries agreeing to repatriate their own citizens, including, violent gang members like the Tren Aragua gang and criminals that poured across our southern border. Venezuela also freeing 6 American hostages. Did we even know they were there? Returning them back to the U.S. By the way, great job, President Trump. I know the state-run legacy media mob has all but ignored this success. Ask yourself, do you think Venezuela would have freed these people if Joe was still in office or Kamala won? Never happened. Panama also, now they're caving to Donald Trump's pressure, offering to end their so-called memorandum of understanding with China and work more closely with the United States. Panama Canal wouldn't exist without us. Another massive victory for Donald Trump. And that's not all. Denmark is still insisting that Greenland is not for sale, but the country is now suddenly open to the U.S. expanding our military presence on the island. And by the way, they might be having a referendum there soon, and maybe the people get to vote themselves, and I'm pretty sure that the U.S. would win that battle. And the media also ignoring the fact that President Trump killed many ISIS terrorists in Somalia this weekend. Remember, Kamala never wanted you to be, she wanted you to be courageous. Never say the word radical Islamic terrorist. Well, Donald Trump killed a whole bunch of them without killing a single civilian. As it turns out, America has a huge amount of leverage. President Trump is not afraid to use it. Take a look.
We had a great talk with Mexico, and we had President Sheinbaum is a woman. I like her very much. We've had good relationships, but we have to stop fentanyl from coming in, whether I like somebody or not, and we have to stop the illegal aliens from coming in. Canada is very tough. They're very, very tough to do business with, and we can't let them take advantage of the U.S. Tariffs are very powerful, both economically and in getting everything else you want. Tariffs for us, nobody can compete with us because we're the pot of gold. But if we don't keep winning and keep doing well, we won't be the pot of gold, and then tariffs won't be so good for us. But when you're the pot of gold, the tariffs are very good. They're very powerful.
While President Trump is reasserting America's dominance on the world stage, he is harnessing DOGE right here at home to drain the swamp, firing politicized bureaucrats of both the DOJ, the FBI, those that weaponized and politicized their institutions. They're simply being escorted out of the building, as they should be. He's also in the process of shutting down USAID. Oh, this has freaked out every Democrat, funneling billions of tax dollars to left-wing causes all around the globe. Wait till you see the detailed list we have coming up, a complete waste of your hard-earned tax money. The president also cutting funding from the dishonest and compromised WHO, the World Health Organization, or better known as the COVID propaganda wing for China during COVID-19. He pulled the U.S. out of the insane globalist Paris Climate Accords, you know, the ones that designated China and India as developing nations. He dismantled DEI programs across the entire federal government. And at the same time, President Trump used his emergency powers to divert more water desperately needed to Southern California. He's done all of this now in just 2 weeks as he begins his third week in office. And while the state-run legacy media mob of the Democrats erupt into a predictable and entertaining fit of hysteria, can't make it up. They can't. They have learned nothing. They just doubled down on Dumb and Dumber. Take a look.
You're gutting the FBI. You're firing all these people across, possibly 1/3, 1/4 of the workforce, and your most experienced people for political reasons. You're doing that. The winner are our enemies, those people who seek to do harm to America and to kill American citizens.
So this is really, it is self-mutilation. America is hurting itself. We think that it is utterly crazy, and we're also really, really angry at you.
Trump has done some fairly popular things in his first few weeks in office. This is not one of them. No, no, no. Horrible, 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 to quote Charles Barkley.
A lot of people at the Super Bowl have beer and guac. All of it comes from much of it comes from Mexico, and the prices of these things are likely to go up.
Let me tell you, we have a thug in charge of the United States. And if we don't wake up, we may not have a United States, because right now he has only been successful in being a divider in chief.
By the way, Chucky, there's plenty of beer made right here in America and lots of guac and avocados from California. Have they learned nothing in the past 10 years? Do they not understand economic and political leverage? I mean, they've watched Donald Trump since 2015. They have learned nothing. Apparently not. They doubled down on the same tired hate, hysteria, doomsday predictions, smear, slander about dictatorship and fascism. When Donald Trump says, well, slapping a tariff on you, that is the beginning of a negotiation. Let me educate you into what the president is thinking and how he thinks. It's called the art of the deal. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is turning into an absolute joke. Don't take my word for it. If you're a conservative, you're going to love this, because the Democratic Party has now elected people to the left of Joe and Kamala. Here are the highlights from this weekend's DNC Forum. Take a look.
How many of you believe that racism and misogyny played a role in Vice President Harris's defeat? Okay.
You fight on, you fight on, you fight on, you fight on. When your government is doing you wrong, you fight on, oh, you fight on.
Will you pledge to appoint more than one transgender person to an at-large seat? And will you commit to making sure those appointments reflect the gender and ethnic diversity of the transgender community?
In order to be gender balanced, we must elect one male, one female, and one person of any gender.
Okay, so Kamala lost because of racism and misogyny, and are they accusing the American people of that? Democratic Party is in desperate need of soul searching. In the meantime, Donald Trump will continue to drain the swamp, rack up achievement after achievement for the American people to make America great. And just breaking hours ago, Senator Susan Collins announced that she, in fact, will vote to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. A big win for Tulsi.
All right, oh, stop! You're so needy. Good evening, everyone. So, Vogue magazine criticized Melania Trump's 2025 White House portrait, comparing her to a freelance magician. Well, it is true. She sure made Jill disappear. President Trump said he will send 30,000 illegals to Guantanamo Bay. They'll be coming from Philly, New York, and San Fran. So consider it an upgrade. Meanwhile, in an interview, border czar Tom Homan called Joy Reid dumber than a box of rocks. The American Geological Society has demanded an apology. Speaking of rocks, scientists have discovered an asteroid that has a 1% chance of hitting Earth, but it has a 99% chance of hitting J.B. Pritzker. Because he's really fat. I mean, seriously, look it up. Kamala Harris remains the front runner for the 2028 nomination. I know, that's some accolade. That's like being first in line at a James Carville kissing booth.
I'd rather be first than last.
That is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Disgraced ex-New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez was sentenced to 11 years in prison for accepting bribes. He appeared to be really excited about the sentence, but it was just a gold bar in his pants. Since the pandemic, American students have fallen further behind in reading skills. On the bright side, though, being illiterate is not an obstacle to success. But also, only 1/3 of New York City fourth graders were deemed proficient in math, which is great for me. I can now charge twice as much when I buy them beer. 15% of women in federal prison are actually men claiming to be transgender. That's according to the New York Times and that weekend I spent at San Quentin. Scientists are using genetic engineering to create mice with 2 male parents. It's all part of a bigger plan to create mice who love musicals. And on The View, Joy Behar claims the new White House press secretary got her job because she's a 10. Meanwhile, Joy is on The View because she's a ton. But Joy's right. Caroline Leavitt is a 10. But also 10, the amount of beers it takes for a homeless guy to have sex with Joy Behar. Not homeless, takes 100. All right, so right now the Democratic Party is finding itself in a very uncomfortable spot. And no, I don't mean in a men's room stall next to a very lactose-intolerant Bernie Sanders. No, the Dems are screwed because the Republicans have pulled the high ground maneuver by becoming the party of common sense, which means anything that might challenge that has to be the opposite, as in bat crazy. Because parties are about differentiation. And how do you differentiate from sane? See, by staking out the common sense middle, i.e. public safety, an actual border, cutting a bloated federal budget, the Republicans have put the Dems in the crazy corner. They're stuck, now at odds with basic truths Americans desire. It was always the case, but now it's really transparent. And if any Democrat tries to deal the common sense card himself, like, say, Fetterman, then you now look a whole lot like a Republican. Although most Republicans, they wear pants. So if you're the Dems, where do you go? The majority of Americans, they're ready to tell them. The latest poll has the Dems at 31% approval. Can you imagine anyone being that unpopular? I mean, we can do that too, Joy, right? You know who else wore white? Hitler. But at no time in recent history has the Democratic Party been more reviled. And they once ran this for president. So the Dems are stuck. With the high ground now so far out of reach, they need to find out what's left for them because their entire worldview has been rejected, like me at an ugly person's conference. And that's because the general public gets common sense. In fact, you could hate Republicans and still say, you know, I like what they're doing with immigration and crime and trans. It's just common sense. It's why so many new demographics have shifted right. The right gained ground with every voting bloc because common sense made sense. As a result, the Dems now have no way to dissent without being against common sense. Take the illegal raids. Sure, some lefties scream racism, but the public hears, wait, they're deporting violent migrant criminals? I'm for that, and I'm Mexican. True. You know, many people of color actually live in these neighborhoods. I know because I go there to teach at-risk youth CPR. And what about trans? Well, would you want your daughter playing junior high basketball against a dude who's taller, stronger, and heavier by 30 pounds? Do you think children who can't spell transgender should be having their bodies permanently altered like they're a suit off the rack at Men's Warehouse? Meanwhile, the odds of genuine gender dysphoria actually happening naturally are about the same as Nancy Pelosi's face. It has to be created. The common sense answer, supported by most Americans, leaves the left with nowhere to go. On crime, same thing. Whatever your party affiliation, common sense means you want your loved ones coming home at night in the same shape they left in, even if it is the shape of a beanbag chair. Is there anything sadder than watching liberal mayors and governors trying to defend murderers, rapists, and child traffickers? It's crazy. And what can the left say when only 6% of D.C. workers actually go to work? Besides, get your lazy ass into the office. Especially when thousands of government buildings sit empty like a meeting of the Jim Acosta fan club. Is there any way to oppose that and not sound like a nut and risk being hired by MSNBC? The truth is, the woke world took over the Democratic Party, and so common sense was there for the taking, and Trump took it. And now the Dems are on the outside looking in like Joe Biden at a mausoleum. See, the Dems can't be the other party of common sense. That lane is occupied. And it all happened because the Dems were in a competition to out-woke each other, allowing Trump to make it safe for common sense again, which means the left is left with defending things that are obviously bad for the country, which now includes their party. Let's welcome